Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first meeting of the year for the Adaptation Resiliency Working Group. I'm Jackie Specht. I am our Resilient Systems Officer, staying in the Office of the Secretary at DNR and standing in for Secretary Kurtz today. Quick reminder for everyone that the meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the Maryland Commission on Climate Change YouTube page. This meeting. So we'll go ahead and jump into a roll call. Delegate Stein. Eric Myers.
Present.
Okay. Bob Allen. Frederica Moser.
I'm here, thank you.
Brandy Espinola.
Here.
Matt Rowe. And here. Sarah Bender.
I'm here.
Tom Parham. Clifford Mitchell.
Afternoon. I'm here till 2:30 and then I've got to go to a series of Potomac meetings.
Gotcha. Thanks for being here. Debbie Hurt-Cornwall.
Here.
Nadia Chahab.
This is Alicia Mulkey representing MDA today.
Thanks. Allison Gust.
Present.
Catherine McCall.
Natalie Snyder, DNR, here for Kathy.
Jen Iosa.
I am here until 3 o'clock.
Great. Thanks for being here. John Papabasalou. And Joy Hadgett.
Present.
Great. Thanks for being here, everyone. We do have a quorum, so can I have a motion to approve the December meeting notes?
Moved.
And a second?
Second.
Amazing. The notes have been approved. Thank you. Okay, we're going to kick off with an update from Summer Modafino from the Office of Resilience. So I'll turn it over to you, Summer.
Great. Thanks, Jackie, and thanks, everyone. This will be a quick update just to let folks know what our office has been working on. The first thing I want to note is that we have not published the Resilient Maryland strategy yet. I know every time I'm in these meetings and sharing with you guys, I keep saying we're so close, and we really are. We're 99% of the way there. We're just in the stage of finishing touches and final checks and approvals. So all I can say is it will be published in the very near future, and you will hear from us as soon as it is. But I also wanted to make sure, since you've mostly heard us talk about the development of the resilience strategy, that you are aware of some of the other initiatives we're going to be focused on this year. So, of course, once we publish the strategy, it doesn't go away. We will be focused on implementing the recommendations in it, reporting on progress and success stories, and also messaging and making sure that we're getting the word out and connecting to other efforts. Additionally, we are going to be able to devote some more attention to local technical assistance. So one piece of that will be the resilience tools and resources side of the equation that are more scalable and can be used by a broader audience. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about that later, but we're also thinking about more tailored support for communities or regional convening support that we can provide. And the last thing that I'll just flag for this group is that obviously state agency coordination is a big part of what we do. And we're thinking about the topics that are of greatest value for state agency coordination at this point in time. One of those topics is coordination around resilience funding. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later in this meeting. The other would be what we've been referring to as emerging topics. And the term, it's a term of art. So one example would be something like extreme heat, which isn't an emerging topic in the sense that many people have been talking about it for a long time. But in terms of sort of the maturity of our cross-agency coordination, we think there's a lot of opportunity to bring folks together and be strategic and do even more there. So that's really high level what we're working on. Hopefully the next time that I'm giving an update, we'll have some even more concrete progress to share, but just really appreciate having the time to let folks know what we're working on.
Thanks, Summer. We are certainly going to be looking forward to that update. I know you are too. So moving into our next agenda item, we're actually going to flip-flop things a little bit here. So we're going to move to item 4. So actually Summer and Allison Gost are going to provide some updates on efforts that the working group agreed to focus on to continue advancing the work group commitments to the next generation adaptation plan. So actually I'll turn it over to Allison first if you're ready to jump into it.
Yeah, thanks. Oops. I have my little screen covered. Thanks, Jackie. And appreciate the flop to accommodate a schedule change for me. So can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. All right, I'm going to share my screen and Ryland's got it for me. Perfect. There you go. Okay. So if you guys will remember from the last meeting and from the next gen adaptation framework, the critical infrastructure sector had a priority, and you can see it right there in the purpose of this document, and Ryland can share this out for folks to see. So there's a priority 1, which is to establish a definition for how to evaluate infrastructure types for criticality and identify critical infrastructure within agencies or organizations. And then I linked to the next gen framework. And so at the end of the year and as part of the work plan for this year, we really wanted to pick that back up. There's been a lot of work since Next Gen was established, and this priority recommendation also kind of lived in the adaptation framework for those who have been around. So this was born out of conversations at a time that looks very different than it does now. And so we want to make sure that we're revisiting this, but also taking stock of where we are now and how critical infrastructure definitions can be used so that we aren't just kind of completing something because it used to be a recommendation, but that it is usable and implementable and practical for the state. And so as MDOT kind of led the critical infrastructure groups before, I went ahead and volunteered to kind of help shepherd this work group for the year. And so what I just did, the easiest thing for me to do was to kind of see the timing wise is I put this document together. And so what today is really is just, I'm going to just run through this kind of as the tentative approach of what we've got. This is all, obviously I have it proposed there. It's all up in the air and editable and modifiable. I'm not sure that's a word, but we're going to go with it. And then also looking for volunteers for people who want to participate. I will be sending an email out to those who were on the sector working groups for critical infrastructure to start with, but then obviously anyone else that wants to participate. And my goal here is a sprint for this. I think very often with these efforts and initiatives, we can kind of, it turns into a marathon, not for like intention behind that, but just kind of really trying to make sure we get everything together. And I think that there's so much work around this that if we really kind of have a focused timeline and an expectation and clear deliverables, that this can be done this year ahead of the August meeting. So just want to run through it. So Ryland, if you can just scroll down a little bit, you'll see in each of the months, they obviously don't have the date yet because that will be dependent on people's schedules, but it has the specific meeting. You know, if there's a meeting, ARWG, obviously we're here today, and then what the specific output is that would be anticipated in that. And then any additional activities that would take place, a lot of asynchronous work, review, feedback, comment incorporation, and the like. And so February, and then in March, we'd kick off resetting the stage and understanding the current landscape. We would solicit updates either via survey or emails or kind of just some starting places for those who are participating. And then we'd hope to have a member list, responsibilities, and timeline, and then send out a broader survey to kind of get feedback on what this deliverable might look like. And so that's kind of the structure. I don't need to read this verbatim for you. Ryland can send it out, but you'll see if you just keep scrolling, there's kind of an output for each of the meetings. I really tried to make sure that we had a specific outcome and a specific action tied to any meetings that we had. And then you'll see some months we don't need a meeting. And then obviously pulling in the ARWG. And the hope would be that the final deliverable, i.e. the definition and the implementation and or utilization in the space, in the landscape in which we exist now in 2026 in the state, is delivered to ARWG for the August meeting. And then it's ready to go for the annual report. And then September, we would have one more meeting, even if there aren't any immediate next steps or we're not continuing this work, we would have a meeting in September to kind of just debrief and check in on that. So that's what I've got. If you've worked on any groups with me before, I'm a fan of structure. So that's why this exists in the way that it exists right now, but it is flexible and adaptable to whoever joins us. And I would invite anyone to, you can shoot me an email. I am going to ask pointedly for somebody who has access to Google to be kind of a file manager for me, as MDOT is outside of the Google system. It's hard to do folders and file sharing. So if you do volunteer and you have access, I'm going to ask for somebody to help me on that side of house. So I think that's it. Wanted to just kind of go through this quickly, but really want to get this priority recommendation done this year and start checking off some of those tasks within the Next Gen framework.
That's great. Thanks, Allison. Any questions for Allison before we move to Summer? Okay, hearing none, Summer, take it away.
All right. Well, I'm going to be talking about two different priorities for this group, which I know folks have seen on the agenda. And I know we talked about one of them at least in the last meeting, which is the Resilience Toolkit. And so just as a refresher, and I know, probably almost everybody is refreshed on this, but this was the recommendation around creating a web-based toolkit of capacity building tools, resources, grants, et cetera, to assist local partners. So basically the idea of kind of having an aggregated and searchable database of all things resilience to take down that barrier to accessing information for local partners. So I think folks know, but we have created an initial version of that. So if you go to resilientmaryland.com, you'll be able to find the current iteration of the Resilience Toolkit. But I think the important thing that we're focused on this year is figuring out how we can make it better. Now we've kind of checked the box of having created a resilience toolkit. And the real question is, how can we make sure we're meeting the intent of what the priority was for this group? So there's a few things that I wanted to make sure to share just in terms of our current status and what we're working on to improve the toolkit. Some of what we're thinking about for the future, and then I do really want to hear from this group if you have any thoughts. So first is we have been very focused on making the toolkit more user-friendly and accessible. There's more we can do, but in particular, we've been thinking about the use case where a local government comes to the toolkit and is searching for grant opportunities for resilience. So we've been focusing on, first of all, just keeping it up to date. Yeah, let me put that in the chat for you. We've been focused on keeping it up to date because we know obviously we're going to cycle through deadlines and it's only as useful as it is current. But we have also been adding in some new functionality and it's not completed yet. One of the new functionalities that we created was a filter where folks can filter by due date. And that is true for grants and loans. There just happen to be a lot more grants than there are loans. And obviously grants are probably the thing that people are coming to the toolkit looking for the most. We also have a field where folks can check whether they're an eligible applicant. We're working on making that a filter so that the use case would be if I'm like, let's say a city manager, I can come to the toolkit, I can search for grants that local governments are applicable or are eligible for that are coming due within, let's say, the next 3 months. And that's a kind of good sort of user experience to be able to churn through this data. So we are still in the progress of making it work. We know there are some issues with some of the display, and we're working to make it a little bit more user friendly, but that's kind of where our focus has been recently. We've also been working on sharing information with local governments from the toolkit directly. We get decent traffic to the website. I would have to look at the numbers specifically, but the one thing that we found to probably be even more helpful than sharing around the link is that we have a monthly newsletter which goes out to all local jurisdictions. And we have been basically filtering on grants that come due in the next 30, 60, 90 days and putting information and links for those programs into the newsletter. And that consistently is the part of the newsletter that gets the most clicks, where we get the most follow-up from local jurisdictions. So we are trying to think about how can we kind of take it a step further and help digest the information even more for local governments. So that's kind of where we are right now. And what we've been thinking about for the future is just finding ways to continue getting the word out about the toolkit, seeing how people are actually using it. We feel pretty confident that the grant example is probably the most common use case, but are there things we could do to make it more useful? Let's say folks are trying to find data sets that they would be able to include in their planning. Or other types of resources than just grants. Are there, things that we might be missing in terms of usability and making sure that this is actually valuable for our audience? And then in addition to that, we are very open to updating features or information that's shown or other things to do with data and display. And of course, making sure that we're doing that with a lot of intentionality and really thinking about, again, the end user first. So that's a little bit about where we are with the toolkit. Would love to hear if anyone has questions, but also, knowing that this group selected the toolkit as a priority, I want to make sure if there are any considerations or things that you want to make sure we know that would make this look like a success for you, want to make sure that we're aware of that. So I'll pause in case anyone has any feedback or thoughts.
Thanks, Summer. Yeah, any questions or comments for Summer? Yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah, Summer, that's like really great progress. Really seems really on point. I was wondering whether you had any feedback from some of the counties that have resilience authorities like Charles or Anne Arundel. Have we done a specific reach out to them? Because they're obviously, like really centering on a local response and, just seeing what their feedback might be.
Yeah, that is an excellent question. I'd have to look back and see if we got feedback from them in the early days of launching it, because I think we did. And I know our early feedback really centered on having the due date filter. But I think your point is a really good one, and it probably is a great opportunity for us to reach back out to those jurisdictions with resilience authorities to do some more targeted outreach for feedback. So I really like that idea. And I see, Frederica, I see your question. We did have a template. We had a survey for feedback on the website until very recently. We actually ended up removing it recently because there were some issues with accessibility for folks using screen readers. So we're kind of figuring out a different approach for that. But we did have a survey going for over a year where we got some good responses from folks.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Ryland, go ahead.
Summer, I'm curious whether your website metrics allow you to see how people are searching. Are they mostly searching for grants like you're seeing clicks on your newsletter? I'd be curious about that, because I think when the idea was in NextGen, it really also centered heavily, and I know your tool includes this, like around data and tools as well as grant opportunities. And I wonder if anybody is actually even looking for those on this website, or if that might be something to think about if we wanted it to do all three, if we wanted to separate them out, or what, that could look like.
That's a great question. To the question about like the analytics that we have, I'll have to check if they get that granular. If they do, I'll make sure to share with the group if there's any insights from that. But your point is really good, because it also could be a chicken and the egg situation where we've put more effort into making sure that the filters and fields make sense for grants. And there's probably some common sense things we could do to check whether that's the case for the tools and data sets and make sure it's more filterable. So yeah, it's a good question. You're also making me think, Ryland. And I'm seeing, oh, sorry, is there someone in the room? I see Brandy has a question in the chat, but if someone had something in the room, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, go ahead, Summer.
Okay. Oh, just about the frequency. Okay, so the question is, how frequently is the toolkit updated? And is MDEM maintaining it, or are agencies uploading their own updates? So far, MDEM has been maintaining it. That has just been kind of simpler from like a systems admin side of things. How frequently have we been updating it? We are going through updates right now. I would say we're definitely updating it on a quarterly basis. We're probably more like every 2 months. I would like for us to get even like kind of faster with the turnaround, especially during periods where we know there's kind of that are basically grant season, where we know deadlines are going to be churning quickly. So yeah, we're at least quarterly, probably closer to every 2 months, making sure to go through and do updates. And again, we have focused more on the grants. So for updates, we've been looking at, in particular, making sure there are no broken links. That was obviously a really big, thing that was coming up last year with federal sites going down. And then of course, just due dates. And I see the note in the chat. Thank you for that.
Summer, it looks like there's another question from Randy as well, which I'm having a hard time reading. I'm sorry, but I think it's about.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. So this is about how folks can share updates. You can email me directly if you're seeing anything that needs to be updated. And we're figuring out, a better process now that we're working through accessibility for a form that can make that happen. And I will say state agencies have done a really fantastic job of letting us know of new programs, deadlines that are changing and things like that.
Other questions for Summer or Allison? Oh, Summer. So. You're right.
It's a little hard to hear what was just said, but I did hear my name, so I was like trying to listen, and I can't. And I see Summer like nodding too, so I don't think she could hear that either. So
But yeah, thank you for saying that, Allison, because I called Summer out. I hear that you have a second thing that you're into, so saying that we can transition to that.
Yes, a little hard to hear, but I think you were saying move on to the second topic that our office is sharing on. So,
Yep.
and I see you nodding. Okay, perfect. So we do have a second item to share on from Office of Resilience, which is another one of the ARWG priorities. So this one is around the multi-agency funding task force. And again, the intent there is to kind of create a structure to better coordinate state funding resources, to identify opportunities to maybe expedite processes, flag mutual opportunities, and also figure out ways to ensure that funding and other assistance is being prioritized toward disadvantaged communities. So that is a tall order. And I will say Allison has put me to shame with her really excellent structure and organization. We are much earlier in the process of planning out what that group could look like. But I did want to share a little bit of information about how the thinking is evolving and what you might hear about that from us in the future. So maybe one place to start is the reason that you're hearing from me and the Office of Resilience is that we are thinking that the agency resilience liaisons could be a great mechanism to move forward this work. And for anyone who's not familiar, the agency resilience liaisons were established by executive order toward the end of 2024. And so the idea is that every principal department in the state designates an agency resilience liaison to work with the Office of Resilience, as do Maryland Energy Administration and Insurance Administration. So we've got really excellent coverage across state entities. And one part of the mission of those liaisons in the executive order spells out specifically coordination of resilience funding. So we are thinking that this group is kind of a great opportunity to help drive home some of the kind of funding coordination that's been flagged by this group as something that should be a priority. And so there's a few things we've been thinking about that we would get started this year. So first is the mission around kind of communicating and coordinating around existing resilience funding. I think there's some initial work that we can do to gain a better understanding of what programs are out there. And again, we have a decent sense of what state resilience funding programs exist or what resilience funding programs that are administered by state agencies exist. But I think there's some work we could do to drill down into understanding what their priorities are, what criteria are actually used to select projects, even getting into the level of what types of data or like indices are being used to see where we have opportunities for more overlap or where there may be kind of some differences in how we're using kind of certain priority language. And also thinking about how different programs could be combined together. Are there common projects that we're seeing where we think there could be a stacking of a couple different funding sources that could allow us to do bigger or more transformative projects? And more importantly than just kind of doing an assessment of what's out there, we're also hoping to create a process where we can regularly bring together the resilience funding agencies to collaborate on funding priorities and just be in conversation to make sure that we're utilizing resources in a way that's more transformative and having a bigger impact. But the other thing, which I know was also a priority when this was established as one of the ARWG priorities, is strategizing around bringing in additional sources of funding and financing, which I know is a pretty tall order right now, just given that there's not a whole lot of additional resources out there that are ripe for the picking. But I think having a more concerted effort to think about non-government sources of resilience funding and also financing mechanisms that we may not have considered before, just knowing that we were in a really different funding environment. That way we have just a better picture of what the full capital stack could look like for this type of work. So I know that's a very, very big picture, but that's kind of how we're thinking about what this group would work on. This is something where we would hope to have the first couple meetings with this group this year, doing primarily the setup of what the structure and cadence would look like, as well as some of that initial assessment of what's out there and what criteria are being used. We also know there's some related efforts going on right now. So I think Rachel's on the call. I know that MDE is doing some work to do a landscape assessment for climate financing. We know the comptroller's office is doing really great work studying the costs of climate change. We obviously know there are lots of great initiatives to coordinate around environmental justice. There's going to be a need to knit all of this together and be in close communication. So we're very much aware of that. And yeah, that's most of the update. Like I said, we're in very early stages, but happy to hear if anyone has feedback, comments, things you'd like to see, what you think would make this more impactful. We are all ears.
Thanks, Summer. Yeah, questions or comments for her about the interagency funding group?
So this is Ian from Maryland Forest Service. What connections have we already made with Maryland Association of Counties and Maryland Municipal League? I'm sure you're already plugged in. I'm just wondering if there's a way to get feedback through them.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I think I'll make sure I'm hearing it right, was asking and sort of checking whether there would be opportunities for feedback from MACO and MML, which I think is a great question, because a really important part of this is making sure that the state agency coordination actually is connecting to the local project needs. So it's a point well taken. We have not connected with MACO or MML yet, but I think, your point's a good one, and it would definitely behoove us to do that.
Yeah, so that'll get us to the electeds, but some of the connections I think we're trying to make are also to staff. So some of the planning connections, and Debbie may have better suggestions on what the check-in points are for that. But we want to use some of the wheels that are already out there.
Definitely agree.
Sort of a similar thought for you, Summer. I know that like the Resilience Authority of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County, they're looking at creative financing strategies for resilience. I don't know how you're thinking about looping them into the conversations as well about broad scale resilience funding.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent point. They're kind of at the top of our list, especially as we're thinking about that broader question of how do we tap into maybe underutilized sources of funding and financing. So it's a good point.
Do we know if there are other jurisdictions that have used those Resilience Authority and bonds? Other than Charles and Anne Arundel and
Yeah.
Yes, it's already right now. Yeah, go ahead, Summer.
Yeah, I think we said the same thing, which is there are only 2 resilience authorities. There's also the Montgomery County Green Bank, which pretty much functions as a resilience authority, although, it's not in their name, or they had a bit of a different journey to kind of get to being established. But yeah, those are kind of the 3 jurisdictions.
Go ahead, Fred.
Thanks, Summer. I'm sure you guys are thinking about this, but I assume that the Chesapeake Bay Trust and the NGOs that are moving resilience money around in smaller projects, some of that's just come from the state, are in the loop on this also. It might be good. They have a lot of experience.
Yeah, they are not yet, but will be. And you're 100% right. We've been trying to think through, we know that there are kind of philanthropic resources. And I think part of it is having more of a strategy for, in a perfect world, are there certain places where we would want to inject philanthropic resources because either like the scale fits with the scale of the funding that they have, or it happens to fill in a gap that maybe state funding can't address. So yes, definitely they are on our list, in addition to kind of other philanthropic players that are already doing a lot in this space and not only bring resources, but some of that knowledge of what the needs are.
Great, thanks. I'll also throw out Environmental Finance Center is worth a talk with if you guys don't have them in the loop, not on this, but on the governance and funding structures around resilience. They've been in that game a long time. They're fairly small, but have long experience. So worth talking with.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I know someone in the room said something about using the wheels that we already have. I think that's a great one to use.
Other questions or comments for Summer? Okay, if none, thank you both. Really appreciate your leadership, Summer and Allison, on these initiatives. I mean, it's really wonderful to see some of these priorities that were called out in the Next Generation Adaptation Plan really moving forward, which is a great segue into the next piece.
I actually didn't put an item on the agenda, but Cliff reminded me that I was lax in my duties and I should be providing an update on the climate and health profile report, because that is also a next gen item and an ARWG work plan item for this year. So we have been meeting, a group of us formed a little steering committee representative of agencies, but then also the scientific and technical working group is participating as well through Dave Namazi from UMCs. And this group is focused on getting a workshop together. We're aiming for May, a workshop where we are bringing together both the people who produce data and tools around health reporting and climate data, but also working on getting end users and translators invited as well, because the overall goal is not to just make a novel report that comes on a shelf. It's also not to develop any new data or tools, but it is to synthesize those and make sure we are giving case studies for applying those data and tools for local planning and health departments and things like that. So we are honing in on an agenda for this workshop. Some of you might be interested in attending, but it won't necessarily be for all of you parties, but we'll keep you updated and in the loop as things progress. So just wanted to provide an update for that as well, since I didn't have it on the agenda and I probably should have.
Appreciate that, Robin. Yeah, Cliff, I don't know if you want to say anything.
He's not here. He had a meeting. That's why
You got it. I'm up to date now.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments for Ryland that she can then pass on to Cliff? Okay, hearing none there, we'll jump into what it previously was item 3 on your agenda, is now item 4. So we're gonna delve into a discussion on tracking next gen. So Ryland's been working really hard to build out this tracking protocol so that we can understand agency progress on the Next Generation Adaptation Plan, as well as thinking about how do we display this information publicly. And a quick reminder for folks, one of the big reasons that we're pushing on this is that State House identified the progress on the Next Gen Plan as a key performance indicator. So I think, as we all know, good material in there. We want to move on it. We don't want to create a plan and have it sit there, but it's also a key performance indicator. So we want to make sure that we understand our progress on that. I wanted to flag our working really closely with Summer and Mike and thinking about alignment with the state resilience strategy and how we're going to be asking for reporting on both of these efforts. I know some folks have flagged that we don't want to be overburdened by the number of asks coming out. So just wanted to kind of curb any fears around that since those discussions are already happening. So I'll turn it over to Ryland. She's going to present for us today on what that sort of internal tracking is looking like and some draft ideas for what a public facing tracker could look like.
So I'm going to be showing 2 different things today. Number 1, I'm going to be showing you the spreadsheet that will look very familiar to all of the people who filled out the agency spreadsheets last year, because we basically compiled all of those into one big master spreadsheet. And that will be something that will remain on the back end and not be public facing. So please don't have any fears about that sort of level of detail being shared out. And then once we talk about some of those back end sort of items, we will then show you I don't know if I want to call it a mock-up because it's more than that, a draft version basically of a website that we hope can be that jumping off point for that public facing version of the tracker. And you'll see that public facing form distill some of the information into a much higher level so that people shouldn't have to be worried about someone targeting saying DNR is not making any progress specifically. It's really taking that more holistic approach and highlighting case studies and success stories at the front so we can really emphasize some of the storytelling that comes out of the work that's happening around Next Gen as more of the public facing front of a big, large BP plan. So, but I'm going to start with a spreadsheet. I just wanted to show you kind of where this was going before we got into the nitty gritty. So what's going to happen also when I share the spreadsheet out is it is not completely filled out, because last year when I provided each agency with that broken out spreadsheet, some people used it, some people didn't, which was totally fine. We did not make any requirement for you to fill that out. But now that we want to move forward with this being our back-end tracking platform, the ask is going to be that agencies do make an effort to now fill this spreadsheet out between now and the May meeting, with the goal of us convening meetings with each agency so that we can discuss concerns in a platform that is, a closed door platform where we can have these safe conversations and not worry about perceptions, and that we can also then take all those comments and integrate them into a more final version, hopefully for the May meeting. Okay, so I said all this in advance so that nobody gets alarmed seeing, a draft version of the spreadsheet. So again, this is what we worked with. I'm going to zoom because I know that's harder to see. So this should look, again, very familiar to everyone who's looked at the agency tracking spreadsheet. This has all of the columns, that are crucial to the information here. We had agreed at past meetings to include columns such as discrete versus continuous, which will help us hone in on some of these items that might be less of a one and done item and more of an ongoing checkbox. And then any completed documents can be linked in the column there. And then of course a details column, which includes notes that people wanted to add, any difficulties that they might have had, or if something needs to change. That details column again can be used for basically anything that we find useful. And so as you can see, some people have filled it out, some people have not, and that is totally fine. So this task summary, I also want to note, is just that condensed version of what the actual task is. It's not the copy and pasted verbatim version of each milestone. Obviously that can get a little wordy. So there's some latitude, but we hope that ultimately it would be able to point the agencies in the right place to find the actual text ask. So I want to pause for a second here, since people are just seeing this for the first time, and just check if we're talking about in terms of column headers and usability for each agency. Did anybody have any trouble with this sheet when they did this last round? And anything that they wanted to see reflected in a final version of this sheet if we use it going forward?
It's the challenge is how to show progress with substance without getting lost in the details.
Right.
Because it's like, I have tree plantings. 500 tree plantings.
Right, and some things are going to be measurable, like tree plantings maybe easy to measure, but other things not so much.
So some of them I'm measuring in acres, some of them I'm measuring in like individuals, and we go between those measures, and we have ways to do that. So, for this, it's like, which is more important? What measure do you want? Because I don't want to give you 3. Probably got 15, but
I think in this level of reporting, we're not asking for that level of detail at all. We are just, this is where we're relying, I think, on our agency to make those sort of decisions.
So overall, consistent with managing for results measures as well, to the greatest extent possible.
I don't think we've done a comparison with management.
I would. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
But but that's something where we we will already be tracking for MFR.
Mhm.
So to the extent that we can show the utility of what we are tracking in MFR for this, that's efficient.
So maybe one of the things I should explain also is for our DNR purposes, what we have done is we have made ourselves a more detailed version of this spreadsheet, and we're letting each agency sort of determine how they want to track their own progress internally. But what we've done is broken out the very hyper-specific things, like sort of what Ann's getting at here, by each DNR unit and each task that they're going to be tasked with, so we can start getting to more of a specific level. But then going from that to this spreadsheet is more of that higher, average, I guess, across all the information we collect. I don't know if other agencies want to share what their experience was when they filled this out, reporting across units or programs.
Well, can I be honest?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember which one this was because I've got so many.
What spreadsheet? You mean?
Yeah, I mean, we've got
Yeah.
MFO, the managing for results for, the budget stuff, but we have greenhouse gas reduction, we have 5 million trees, we have grant reports. A lot of our projects touch multiple funding sources and they all have reporting streams.
Right.
And they all have spreadsheets.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping we filled it out.
You did.
Okay, good, cool.
We did it together.
Ryland, I wonder if it'd be helpful to show people the sort of draft for the public facing version of this so that folks can see kind of what level of detail is going to be shared publicly and how that relates to this internal tracking.
Sure. Let me jump to the beautiful website. So this was produced with the assistance of DNR's IT department. And so I really they're not in the room with us, but I want to make sure they get the full credit for producing this. This directly pulls from that spreadsheet that I just shared. So that is where all the information is coming. So obviously at the top, obviously it will link to the plan. And then at the top here, you see this ticker. So this is what we were emphasizing a minute ago when I was talking about those success stories and highlights. So this would ideally link to press releases, news articles, anything where we can share some of those little moments pulled out. They don't have to be anything huge, but this would be great to highlight those up at the top. So people can ask, well, what progress have we made? Do they want to see those stories? And then, of course, we get into that little description about the plan. I think this is broke. Let me refresh. There you go. Okay. This is an overall progress bar where you can see all we've done. And again, this is pulling from a spreadsheet that was only half filled out. So this is not accurate, obviously, as to what's actually happening. Shows complete items, in progress items, and not started, and gives us obviously that 2%, but this is just the big sweeping whole plan picture here. Then if you continue scrolling, we break down by all the different chapters here. And these, we envision, again, have that story highlight here, which could be similar to the one found at the top, or the same stories is fine. Then the progress status for each of those items, just sorted by the progress on resource ready priorities under that chapter and investment needed priorities. And then it could pull out any of those key priorities. But let me pull one where there might be an example. So water resources, for example. We had envisioned MDE has some great success story about dam removal or something, for example, that they link here. And then we can show progress and then label some key priorities and how those specifically. And this could be decided by us about what we wanted to highlight. If it's not a story, that's okay. We can just pull that out to show as success. So each of them, again, has their own little drop down here for you to look at. And we would hope, of course, that each agency would be able to contribute and it wouldn't just be the DNR show, right? We want everybody to participate. So As you can see, that's also, again, a very high level. It's pulling from the big in-depth spreadsheet, but showing things that are, you know, a lot more average, I guess. Any thoughts on this? That's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's a nice job. I'm picturing like my kids, you know, like hitting this and being able to see main points, and I know what their attention span is for my stuff, and I think this is really good.
Great, okay, positive results. I saw Jennifer, last time was Rocky.
Yes, when you have a group with a photo with a large group of people, 1 in 4 adults has a disability. And when you've got 10 adults in a photo and no one is blind or uses a wheelchair, it says that people with disabilities aren't really being included. So as they're looking for stock photos, they may want to look for some that include people who have a white cane or a wheelchair because people with disabilities are disproportionately impacted by climate change.
Hey, thank you for pointing that out. I think when we have those press releases linked, I think that'll be an important thing to note for our comms team. So thank you. Yes, Frederica.
So this looks great. I'm just, do you guys have a vision that ultimately it will be somehow, like right now, it's just kind of a flat delivery of information? Is there an idea about making it more interactive? Or, I mean, is there an idea behind this that you want anybody in particular to take action or agency or anything? Or is this really just a dashboard to pull data into an accessible form for those who might be curious about what that's happening in Maryland adaptation and resilience? Thank you.
I think this is a communication mechanism. I don't think this is necessary. I think this is showcasing progress that we are making rather than action oriented for an outside party per se. Does that answer your question? And please, anyone correct me if you feel differently.
No, I think that's right. The only thing I'll add to it is we had included this space here for stories because I think that that could be a really great opportunity to highlight, okay, this is what it looks like on the ground. And that could inspire groups to, I don't know, reach out to DNR to say, hey, we saw this project, how do we get in on this? So we want to make sure we do some of that storytelling so it connects to more of that like human level. But ultimately, yes, it is a way to communicate out about how is the state actually making progress on this plan.
But to Frederica's point, is there a thing, you know, it's like, okay, maybe that success story is where you're trying to inspire action, but giving them that next contact too, like at the bottom, like interested in helping. And that'll depend on the story, but
I think in a perfect world, what this would also entail is a more coordinated approach to our press releases around the plan across agencies and institutions, of course. And I think once we build out the tracker, which is really the bulk of the work here, that's the part that I would like to then pivot to, is talking with each agency and institution that's contributed and has success to share about what that looks like, what things can we highlight. And again, because I don't want it to be the DNR show, because I think we could produce a lot of great stories, but I want everybody to feel like they've contributed, and they have. So having those discussions where we kind of push people to contribute the press releases and stories and help them develop the language around it is a next step in my mind. So looking at where we're going in terms of public facing, do we have any concerns that want to be shared here? Any stuff that people want addressed in the discussion forum right now?
somebody read that.
I have it. Frederica says, agree with the comments about the stories influencing action broadly. There is a good addition, that is a good addition, but get the stories require
capacity and time to put out there. Great job.
Yep. And that's why we're hoping the capacity can be shared amongst all these beautiful people here today. Yes, still.
Is there a plan for how often the metrics will be updated? Is it just every time you kind of share out the spreadsheet with state agencies at ARWG and then they get back to you with updating it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something that we would love to discuss with the group here today and his question, in case you didn't hear it, was how frequently will the website be updated? Will it center around requesting the updates on the spreadsheet? And the answer is yes. The frequency is something, again, we will be coordinating with the state resilience strategy and trying our best to coordinate with other asks so that we're not doing, a whole year of everybody needing to produce numbers for the same things. So what we're going to hopefully do will at the very least be requesting a once a year update, which is kind of the cadence we have right now. If we count the May meeting last year as the first update, and if we count requesting our partners update by the next May meeting as the next round. But hopefully, once we have established a tracking protocol, I think twice a year is on the table potentially, but we're sticking with once a year now while we kind of work out the kinks. We don't want to hold anybody to a system of tracking that we're then going to modify in some way. So how does everybody feel about that? Do you think there should be more frequent updates? And that being said, I guess the spreadsheet itself could be updated at any time. It's just wouldn't reflect on the website until there's the official request deadline. Yes, Rachel.
Just noting that many of the reporting processes for this data in other contexts is usually coming in about once a year. And since this is also a plan with relevance to the commission, it makes sense that perhaps if there's a nice sweet spot between when a lot of that data is normally coming in through agencies and when at least the last quarterly meeting of the commission is timed, it may be beneficial to get the data updated by then so that it can also be flagged to the commission. But I would guess that, at least in my experience, a lot of times this data is being done on a fiscal year, such that usually that reporting timeline is somewhere in late summer, early fall. I know it's highly dependent, but I would guess it may be a little difficult to get all of these things updated with clear numbers more than once a year.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. I wrote some of those flags down for us to keep in mind. Allison?
Yeah, it took me a second to take my hand down. I was going to say something similar to Rachel, just feel like I've said it before, but really to emphasize wherever we can align the reporting on this with existing reporting timelines and cadence, so it's kind of within the fray of people and in the mindset of when we're reporting, I think is great, especially with the larger commission reports as well. But Rachel got it, so just echoing her sentiments.
Yes, and I think important to note a federal fiscal year versus the state fiscal year. Those are two different dates, so I'm writing that down too. Okay. Everyone's just blown away by the website, so.
Basically, if everybody who was working on this in 2020 could see how far this has come, blown away.
Yeah, it looks great. Now we just need to fill it with real information.
Yeah.
The hard part. I'm going to flip back to the spreadsheet really quick because this is where the bulk of the work obviously is going to be happening year to year. And I really want agencies to take a look at this. And I think this is definitely going to take work outside of this meeting space to think about and reemphasize here are the actions that we want from you guys between now and May. We want each agency to take a look at this larger tracker. I will send out the link to those people so that everybody has this, but I won't be sharing that with the larger ARWG list for privacy. And as we work out the kinks, I don't want anybody to, be worried about that. And then, as I mentioned before, we are going to be contacting our agency partners to set up meetings so that we can have that safe space to discuss concerns or things that we're going to need to be modifying or flexing on going forward, because we're not going to know right off the bat where everything is. That could be concerns with the spreadsheet, the tracking itself, the website, but that could also be anything in the plan that you're tagged on that might need to pivot, because that's something that we're going to have to discuss. Again, we've been waiting on this tracker, but we know once that bulk of that work is done, a big topic of conversation has been, now that it's been so long since Next Gen's been out. Can you believe it's been over a year? Almost. No, over a year. And then things have changed in that time. So do we need to work on adapting it and changing some of our milestones or priority language to reflect what's actually happened in that time span? So the ask is, agencies, you're going to have to take a look at this again and buy into it. And then hopefully in May, we can have another tracking check-in discussion where you will all be expected to kind of report on progress. You don't have to go down line by line, but it would be great to have that for everybody to discuss. How does that sound to the group?
That's fine. There's nothing off the top of my head that maybe language to revisit, but in terms of the priorities that we put down, I think a lot of it was really, just more driven by our priorities and sort of work essential to the mission here.
Yes. I will also send out a zip file that will have a link to the website for people to look at, because I know that might take time to walk through and digest for the agency partners as well. Okay. Everyone's being really shy, so I think we're moving right along.
Okay, zipping on through. Next agenda item. So we're gonna have a legislative session briefing. I had hoped Lydia McPherson, our Ledge director for DNR, was going to be here. I don't think she's online. So you guys got me. So we're just gonna highlight a few pieces of legislation that have been put forward this year that might be of interest to this group. And so the first one is HB 254. It's a DNR departmental. It's called Supporting Inclusive Community Adaptation Act. We had a hearing on P17. The bulk of this really focuses on restructuring several programs and practices to help DNR better support adaptation at the local level. Another one, HB 779. This was put forward by Delegate Lehman. Hearings today. I don't know if we've gotten to it yet, but we'll be hearing more about that soon. Sorry. Oh, okay.
Is that where Lydia is?
Could be, I don't know. And so this one focuses on amending CoSmart Council to address riverine flooding as well as coastal flooding. And then the last one, SB 197, HB 243, another departmental, I believe put forward by MVP. And so in this bill, it helps to align the land use article with the newly established planning principles to ensure consistency. So very, very brief updates. I don't know the ins and outs of all of these like Lydia does. But yeah, those are some that we're keeping our eye on for sure.
Yeah, any of our agency partners want to speak up about the bills?
Okay, if not, we can move into public comments. So if you're in the room and have a comment, go ahead, please raise your hand. If you're online and have something to share, please put your name in the chat. Okay, we're going to be done so early today, you guys. So our next meeting is May 27th from 2 to 4. Oh, we got one. Jessica, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. I guess I'm the pinch hit public commentator who just happens to be a member of the public that doesn't have any business before the working group, but I just attend to be able to say I witnessed it. And I could say and attest, yes, this meeting actually took place. So there you go. Somebody in the public paid attention. Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you, Jeff. We appreciate you being here. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none. Next meeting, May 27th, 2 to 4. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.